Hello, and welcome to Nostalgia Marcana. I'm your host, Doug Leaf. Each episode of this podcast, we'll look back on the movies, TV, games, people, and phenomena that we still love talking about all these years later, and ask ourselves why these bits of pop culture still enchant us today. This week, we'll be revisiting... Let's go! Today we're talking about Super Mario 64, one of the most renowned video games of all time, one that is not only evolutionary in terms of bringing Mario forward, but revolutionary in the way it approached design. And we're going to get into all of that, but I am not doing this alone. Of course, it would not be a Mario game if I did not have a player or two along with me. They are the host of several podcasts, including Reignite, Screen Snark, and Fun and Games. They've been on this podcast before, talking about, among other things, Chrono Trigger, Spaceballs, and Queen. Please welcome back to the show, Matt Storm, aka Matt Stormageddon.
Hi, thanks for having me back. I'm going for your high hitters. I mean, there are some guests that I'll never beat because they're on every other episode, but I'm working towards it. I'm going for that title.
It'll take you a while to catch Rich.
Yeah, I was gonna say Rich Baker is on far too many episodes, and I love him on every episode he's on, but I don't know that I'll ever catch him.
It's easy when he's just one of your game night buddies. Just call up and go hey man, let's do one.
Yeah.
But Matt, this was your idea, and I'm really glad we're talking about this today because this is a very special video game. For people who don't know video games or play them a lot, this is up there with say, I don't know, what the jazz singer is to movies as holy shit, look what you just did. That's what this is to games, with, of course, a lot less racism than the jazz singer has. So, Matt, tell me your nostalgic memories of Super Mario 64.
Sure. So, so Mario 64 revolutionized 3D gaming, though not the first game to go into 3D space, but nobody really likes to talk about Bubsy 3D. So that to one side, Super Mario 64 is kind of the game that brought us into the third dimension with video games in a real way. And for me, it's special for a lot of reasons. And I've told this story in many places, but it feels very appropriate, especially on your show, Doug, as we are both of the chosen people, and it's bar mitzvah related. So for those who have not listened to my side quest episode on Super Mario 64 over on Fun and Games, or the myriad of other shows I've been on talking about Mario 64, the long and short of why this game is important to me is because it's part of a very important video game journey for me. So I got bar mitzvahed in 1996. My birthday's in October, so I got bar mitzvahed just about right after this game and the console came out, because they came out in late September in North America. And of course, back then, pre-orders weren't really a thing. You could pre-order stuff at Toys R Us and some other places, but it wasn't common like it is at GameStop and online now, and a lot of online retailers. Pre-ordering just wasn't common sense or common knowledge for those who played video games back then, especially for me as a 13-year-old kid who's only kind of coming into their own as a video game player. I had an NES, I had an SNES. The N64 was the first console I remember seeing ads for Nintendo Power and going, I want that. I want that as soon as it comes out. And so for my bar mitzvah, I, of course, cleverly asked my parents, I want this thing as my bar mitzvah gift. I don't care how long I have to wait. I'll wait, but I want it. And they were like, okay. And month goes by, can't really find any. They're sold out everywhere. Not super new to fans of Nintendo that their consoles are in high demand and short supply most releases. But one afternoon, I think it was a Saturday, I said to my dad, can we go to Toys R Us and try? I want to see if they have any. And he sighs and says yes. And so we go. And we go to Toys R Us. And for those who didn't shop at Toys R Us back then, back in the 90s, they didn't have this like wall of games like you have now at GameStop or Toys R Us. It was like a little like booth essentially that led to a back room, and someone stood there and like you'd bring them a ticket and they would bring you the game. Like you would pull it off the wall. The games weren't out. You couldn't look at the boxes. It was kind of just a like take a flyer and then you bring the flyer and they bring you out the game from the back room. So we went to this Toys R Us.
Pornography was purchased the same way back then. Yeah.
Yes, also true. And so we went up to the person behind the counter. Now, this person behind the counter, I was young enough that they could have been 25 or 55. I have no idea. Tall gentleman, dark hair, mustache. But to my young brain, it was like, this is an old person who's going to get me my game. So anyway, my dad and I say, hey, do you have any N64s in stock? And he's like, I don't know. Let me go check. So he goes in the back, comes out with one. He said, yeah, we do. Do you want a game with it too? I said, yes, Mario 64, please. Got the N64, no pre-order. Brought it home. Blew my tiny 13-year-old mind. Fell in love with the game. Played, I think, Mario 64 for like 5 hours straight. It was only until recently retelling the story that my co-host Jeff on Fun and Games said, so that was a great day for you, but if you took someone's pre-order, that was someone else's villain origin story, and it's your fault.
Yes.
And I was like, I'd never thought of it that way. But yeah, and so because of the hype, because of me being aware of how rare the console was, and then getting home and getting to play it, the impact this game had on me, like it's when you feel like your blood is electrified, right? This idea of like you just feel this intense excitement. And it's only happened with a couple of games since, but Mario 64 is the first time as a fan of video games and as someone who is tracking the release of video games that I got to experience a thing that I had wanted for so long. And for so long was probably 6 months, however long it was that we knew about the console before it came out. And so, yeah, and because of all of that experience wrapped together along with how much I love this game, it's kind of become one of those pinnacle video game moments for me, along with a few others.
It's funny. My nostalgic memories of this game are very different, and it probably has a lot to do with our slight age difference, because I'm just a few years older than you. So this came out in 96. I was 16. And at the time, because I was kind of in the second half of high school, I was really busy. And so even though I'm kind of a lifelong video game nut, I skipped this console generation. I never owned an N64. I didn't own a PS1. To the extent I was doing any gaming during this time, it was on PC and fairly limited. I was doing theater and high school journalism and athletics, and so I literally just had no free time, and so. We had a family friend that owned an N64. I remember going over to their house and playing it there for like short stretches. I mean, still being very impressed with it. It's still a very impressive game. And I understood, kind of what its impact was, but I didn't even really get to play it in full until I think in college I was emulating it on a PC, which is not ideal because you really need the N64 controller, which is, if you've never seen it, is this very large, like, W-shaped thing that is like, it's real bulky and weird, but it is, the game was designed around it. So trying to do it on a PC with mouse and keyboard is less than ideal, but I sure played through pretty much most of the main campaign that way because I was still pulled along by it. And yeah, we will get into kind of what makes this game so impressive on a technical level that, again, really bringing games into the third dimension in a way that hadn't been done before and kind of laying the template for everything that's come since. So in a weird way, like the most high content or like distilled version of this I got was when I ended up eventually getting a GameCube and playing its successor, Super Mario Sunshine, and then moving on to what I think is kind of the apotheosis of 3D Mario stuff, which is Galaxy, which is just incredible. But you don't get there without this. Like this is such this is literally like, sea creatures going onto land in terms of like what this did, because you have to put yourself back in the mindset, in the early 90s of like, these developers finally going, okay, we finally have hardware that can do 3D. We need to take 2D Mario, which we at this point had worked up to Super Mario World, with a really clear template and like formula for like, this is what Mario is. Now do it in 3D. And I can't imagine the meetings they had of going, what does that even look like? now that Mario can move around in 3 dimensions.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those things too that, like, you know, Shigeru Miyamoto, this is his baby. He's still heavily involved with creating Mario at this point. Now he's more of in like a supervisory role, and other folks take the lead on the newer Mario games. But this was in his heyday of him, like, especially the console releases, at least being at the lead of it, him and Nintendo EAD. And so, like, it's really interesting to take this thing that you created from nothing practically for the NES, and now you have to redefine it, right? You created parameters. Mario runs left to right. You get items. And for the most part, with the exception of Mario 2, which has a whole other can of worms, the US version of Mario 2, most of the Mario games were similar. Not the same, but left to right, get power-ups from blocks, you know, jumping, running, flying. But adding that to Super Mario 64 is a whole different beast. That third dimension is a huge deal. And I joked about it before, but like Bubsy 3D, the reason it's panned is because it did all the wrong things, right? And it's one of those things where they didn't know they were the wrong things. It's easy to rag on that game because it's truly awful. But like, it was untreaded territory. And this could have very easily been the worst thing they ever did. But they're also really smart at knowing what makes Mario Mario. And I think it all, like, if we're going to talk about the design, the thing that is the clear lead is why this game works so well is because the basic gameplay loop is always fun. And what I mean by that is running and jumping in this game always feels good and rarely feels frustrating. Camera sometimes feels frustrating, but the basic mechanic, the very basic thing you do with Mario, running and jumping, which is key to a Mario game being a Mario game, is absolutely sublime in this game, even to this day.
Yeah, and you can tell because they didn't change it, right? Like, as these other 3D Mario games have come along, he basically still moves the same way he does in 64 for 3D Mario games. And you talk about that, like, is it fun? Like, this came up on our Super Mario 3 episode, which was the developers on, and same guys, this is Shigeru Miyamoto, saying, looking at these levels they were designing for Super Mario 3 and going like, well, wouldn't it be more fun if we added this little thing? And sure enough, they'd add it and it was more fun. And I think you look at the development of this and you have to imagine that the developers moving Mario around and going like, okay, but if it's not more fun that way, well, then let's tweak it. Let's do this until it is, like, you have to make sure that as you're building the thing, it is fun before you get into, how specific levels are going to work out or things like that. Like, as you said, the basic movement has to be fun. And you mentioned the other thing that is critical to this, which is the camera. I think maybe not Bubsy 3D, but like there had been other 3D games, right? There'd been Doom, but which we covered on a previous episode. There'd Star Fox, like limited versions of 3D, and like the 3D shooter or first person shooters kind of had their own thing worked out by this point in terms of Doom, Wolfenstein, Quake, these kinds of games. But to have like a 3D platform or to do what Mario does, you really have to reconceive what everything looks like and how it works. And a large part of that comes down to literally the camera. So I think a good touchstone for this is Crash Bandicoot, because we did an episode on that. Crash Bandicoot seems to me like if you were to hand me Mario and say, make this in 3D, I would probably come up with something more like Crash Bandicoot, because Crash Bandicoot basically just runs down hallways. They're 3D hallways. It's not that different from 2D, but it's a little bit wider of a path you have to maneuver around in. But that is, I think the first draft of this. And here, they've done something that is so revolutionary, saying we're getting rid of that structure. We're not going to have you run down a series of hallways that make up this game. We're going to give you a 3D playground to just run around in. And you talk about being a kid, like being a kid and running and jumping on a playground is like, that is like quintessential kid fun.
Yeah, the playground thing is really, really key, is that every world, especially the first world you go into, Bob Battlefield, feels like a playground. It's open, it's wide. There are no pits. Like, you can just run around and have a good time. They tweak that as it goes. Also, fun fact about Doom that blew my mind only a few years ago. The reason that Doom doesn't necessarily feel 3D is because it actually, in fact, turns out it is not. It is 2D. The reason you can shoot up at enemies on cliffs is because it's actually a 2D plane designed to look like it's in 3D. And when I first learned that, it blew my damn mind. I was like, wait, what? No, that can't be real. But yeah, that's the whole design philosophy of Doom, which is wild to me.
Yeah, you have to reconceive all of those Doom levels and realize, like, you're not actually going like under a tunnel. Like there are no tunnels that go under other. They couldn't do it.
Yeah.
You couldn't go underneath a different 3D surface. It's all just designed to look sort of like that's what you're doing. And it's, you know, it's again one of those things where it's like when someone tells you like, "Hey, we remade this game on a TI-83 calculator." It's like, yeah, we tricked this hardware into doing something it's not designed to do. But this was true 3D. Like, this is, you know, actual polygons moving in a 3D space, and like, there's so many considerations that you have to put into it. And the camera's the biggest one, which is like, okay, well, you have to control, like, how does the game decide how close up to be, where in relation to you, how much control do we give the player over where the camera goes? And this had really never been done before. So, like, again, with Crash Bandicoot, the camera, it's 3D, but it's in like fixed locations. So it follows along, but it feels basically like it's on a track. Like, the developers, like Naughty Dog, is controlling the camera for you and telling you here's where it goes at all times. And here, if you're Mario running around a playground, like, you have to be able to move the camera at your will in case you're, you know, up against a wall, say, and now you can't see anything, or, you know, you want to get a better view of the surroundings. But then you don't want to have to be controlling it every second of the game, because that would be annoying. So we have to teach the camera how to figure out, well, if the player's not actively controlling the camera, what does it do, and how does it know where to go? Like, that's a lot of, you know, stuff to hand over to a computing or programming team and go, here, you figure that out.
Yeah, I think, you know, and of course, this is before the days of dual analog. We're still several years away from that. And so the C buttons function as quick camera movements if you just need to, like, junt the camera to one side or the other to see what's happening. For the most part, the smoother movement of the camera is just handled automatically. Also, the narrative conceit that you're being followed by Lagatu with a camera the whole time is incredible, because that means, like, when the camera, like, why do we see Mario like this? Why is it in 3D in this perspective? Well, because you're actually watching a broadcast of Mario saving Princess, and, like, it's never really mentioned again. And there are some, like, nods to it later in the game where you are in a room with a mirror and you can see him floating behind you, and it's very clever. It's very silly, but it's very clever. And it's not perfect, and now on later hardware, unfortunately. So the most recent time I replayed this was on the 3D All-Stars pack on the Switch, which I'm glad exists, but it is such a bare bones port, and not a good one at that. And so, like, the button input delay there's a little bit of button input delay, and most importantly, they just moved the C buttons to the different directions of the second analog stick instead of giving you true analog camera movement, which again wasn't in the original game, so I get it to a level, but there was not really much done to these versions of the game to make them work well on the Switch, which was all they were meant to be on. And so that's a bit of a disappointment. But that said, revisiting it, it's not a huge problem, because again, like you said, Doug, the basic camera movements are kind of handled for you, and in most cases, movement and control is still pretty great. But it does come down to that camera, and there are plenty of games later where the camera is a huge problem, whether it's fixed or not, or the camera gets used as a game device. You think about Resident Evil not long after this, also fixing the camera on purpose to add to the horror of it, that you can't see a whole room, that you don't know what's down the hallway. And so this is kind of the start of that, as well as the camera being an actual character or just a characteristic of the gameplay, as important as anything else. We didn't talk about the camera in the SNES or NES generation or Genesis, because there was no such thing really. You wouldn't conceive of the space that way. But this game and the games that came after really made us like, now camera movement and the view of the character is key to the success of a video game, depending on the game you're making, especially if it's in a 3D space.
Well, right, because the only consideration in the 2D space is how zoomed in are you?
Correct.
Right, and or even can you zoom in and out depending on the nature of what it is. But because of a 3D environment necessitates that, right? Because you have to be able to see where you're going, and because you could go in 360 directions or 360 degrees of movement on just one plane. Think about how movies are made. Movies, the cinematography and shot composition is so important because you are controlling what the audience sees and often, importantly, what they don't see. And here, where you're freely roaming around, you need to ensure your game still has some degree of that. And as you said, maybe in a horror space, we don't want you to see anything. So we up the tension by reducing the ambient light in the room or restricting the camera's view. But in a Mario game, that's not really a consideration so much. And it's much more about, like, especially here, it's exploration. And you can't explore if you can't see where you're going.
Yeah, that's totally true. And like, the exploration, I think, is the reason to play this game again and again. I think it's the reason to play any of the 3D games. And to be fair, the exploration is a big part of the 2D games also, especially after the original Mario Brothers. But like, this game specifically, I think, and is only built on by Sunshine, Galaxy 1 and 2, and Odyssey, which I feel like is the pinnacle of like these kinds of games, is you want to explore the space. The thing that Crash Bandicoot didn't do is there was some exploration along the paths to find secrets and other things, but you couldn't go wherever you want to look. In Mario, I want to go back to the Bob Battlefield example. You can find things in places. You can find coins, the red coin hunt in all of Mario 64. Like, there's some under bridges, behind walls, tucked under stuff. The exploration is really what drives the rest of the game to happen. And there are very few stages where you're not encouraged to look. In fact, the fact that every stage starts when you jump in the painting with the name of the star that you're going after is like a little hint to what you need to go explore. And some of it are pretty straightforward. Get to the end of the stage, fight a boss. And then others are like, oh, okay, well, I have to race a penguin. Well, where is this penguin? I only see a house here with a chimney. Where do I find the penguin I have to race? Like, you're encouraged, well, I guess I could try and jump in the chimney. Maybe there's something inside the house. And then you find a whole secret path. Like, that whole oeuvre for this game is, I think, what really drives it forward. Because, like most Mario games, it's not the narrative that's really pushing you on, other than the basic dangling carrot of saving the princess. And so that exploration had to be rich in order for this game to be successful. And there are people still finding secrets in this game, both intentional and unintentional. And I think that's really a testament to the kind of game they made.
Yeah, I think we should kind of describe what the loop of this is, because one of the things they did was they totally changed the format. So we had Mario 1, which is just linear levels, run left to right, and then they give you the next one. Then you get skipping Mario 2, which is its own weird thing, but functionally the same, run left to right. Mario 3 does that as well, except they give you a little more verticality, and they give you this world map to move around, but still level after level after level within those worlds. And Super Mario World does that again with a little, just, iterating on it a little bit, but not really changing all that much. Here, they don't do that. First of all, instead of giving you like a map with multiple worlds, they start you off in one of the best hubs of any game ever. They just give you Princess Peach's castle to run around in and explore, which is basically a whole giant level full of secrets in and of itself, which is worth talking about. And then, as we sort of alluded to, inside there are you access the other worlds via mostly these paintings. That you jump into a painting and then you are greeted with a screen that shows you a star and like a chapter name, which gives you kind of a hint as to what it is you need to do in the playground this time to get the star. Once you get the star, if you jump in again, they'll tell you, hey, here's the next star, and you're in the same exact three-dimensional space, this playground, but now you have to do something else within it to get the next star, and you are trying to collect stars because those open doors within Princess Peach's castle that lead to more areas and more paintings and more gameplay fun. That's the basic loop.
Yeah, and the stars, the power stars, there are 120 in total in the game, and then you need a rising scale of them. I think it's 15, 30, and then maybe 60, I think, to get into these Bowser doors where you fight Big Boss Bowser. You do it 3 times, and then after the 3rd time, you beat him and rescue the princess. And yeah, so to take it a couple of steps back, you jump into paintings to enter the levels. You jump through them and they wobble like water. Now, is it the best water effect? No, for sure not. But to my 13-year-old brain, it might as well have been magic, because like I was literally jumping into a thing and then the next thing I know, I'm in a whole other world separate from this hub world that I was in. Like my brain couldn't comprehend how that made sense. I was just excited to do it. And all of these worlds that you jump through are so well realized, which is a thing that the designers of Mario have always been good at, is kind of realizing these worlds that you feel the impact of and you can get the theme of quickly and understand how they work. And another fun thing about the stars, you can get stars out of order. If you discover a star by exploring that wasn't the one you jumped into the painting for, you'll sequence break and come back out, and then it'll jump back to the star you should have done, but it'll also show you the star that you got, which I think is really brilliant. You got number 5. Now go back and try to get number 2 that you were originally going for. Yeah, it's really brilliant game design and very free-flowing. There's also stuff, like you said, to discover in the castle itself. There's a basement area and like a top-level area, an upstairs and a downstairs. It also contains one of the most miraculous video game mechanics that I couldn't even begin to explain how it works, but I think that there are deep dives on YouTube on how it functionally works. But for the first 2 Bowser doors, you just have to get enough stars. You open the door, you run in down a hallway, fall through a trap door, and go to the Bowser stage, and then go fight Bowser. On the 3rd one, you have access to where Bowser's painting is. You see it at the top of the staircase. But when you run up the staircase, you can't get to the top. It just goes forever until you have enough stars. And it's one of those things that you could run endlessly, and then when you stop and turn around, you're still in the same place in the middle of the staircase. And mechanically, it doesn't matter how it works. Visually, for anyone now or then, was like, what the hell? How does this work? This is amazing. It's dream logic stuff. Right. And I love that. And this game has a lot of that kind of dream logic stuff. There's a painting that you jump in where it's a wet dry land, where depending on where you jump into the painting, there are like 3 zones. The water level will be at one of those zones, depending on how high or low you jump into the painting. Little things like that you couldn't possibly do in any other Mario game. It only works because of this conceit, this hub world, and this design. But even then, like, there's so much to discover within the hub, right? There's all sorts of little ways. Like, if you go into the castle foyer and you look up at the stained glass window of like with the sun or whatever, the light streaming through it, if you stare at it long enough, you will get a star. Yeah. Right. Little things like that just make it feel like, oh, I don't even need to go into one of these paintings to start getting this experience of like being constantly tantalized. This is the thing that I think Mario does really well, because in the absence of a plot that you care about,
you need something to pull you forward. Like all they give, even to this day, the plot of a Mario game is just, go do levels till you get to the end of the game and rescue the princess, right? You know, they can't make me care about that. They're not going to pull me forward into the narrative the way, an RPG would or something else where like I'm in it for the story. So what they give you as a substitute is just like childhood wonder and surprise, where like every time you go turn a corner in one of these things, they're like, hey, I came up with something fun for you to see or do. And it's that experience of like, imagine like going to Disneyland for the first time and going like, oh, not only are there all the like bespoke rides that you're supposed to go on, but like around every corner, you might find just a little whimsical thing, just a little flourish to delight you. And like everything about a Mario game is just like, oh, where can I find more of those? Like beating Bowser and getting to the credits is so not the point of these games. It's just like, wait, I don't care about that. I want to explore every unexplored corner. And there are no wasted spaces here, especially where like polygons are at a premium, right? This is the dawn of 3D. They can't make the kind of detailed worlds they would make in Odyssey or Galaxy. So they have to make it all count, and they do.
Yeah. I mean, one of the earliest memories I have of that is, I think it's when you get either 10 or 15 stars. I can't remember how many that trigger it, but the center of the main lobby of the castle, when you look up, there's a sun in the sky, which doesn't really do anything until you've gotten a certain amount of stars. There's a spotlight coming down. And when you look up, you're taken to a stage where you're flying with a wing cap. And you're like, oh, how did I get here? What do I need to do? And if you get all the red coins in that area, you get a star and you unlock the red cap for other stages. Little secrets like that to unlock the power-ups even. The power-ups aren't just given to you in this game. You have to figure out how to get them, and then you get access to them in all of the other stages. There are 3 of them: the wing cap, the translucent cap, which is in a blue box, and then the metal cap, which is in a green box. They also all have fun little themes and allow you to do different things in the stages. But like that just adds to the discovery. The translucent cap lets you walk behind paintings and in the Boo stage and find hidden secrets, things like that. The metal Mario suit allows you to walk on the floor of the water and find other discoveries, break boxes that you couldn't otherwise when you're floating and swimming. I mean, we could probably just talk about the sense of discovery with non-specifics in the stages and go an hour just on that, because there's just so much packed into this game. And I think you're right. I think that is like that childlike wonder is what makes this game work so well. Also, just the design in general of Mario is so whimsical in this. He's made of polygons, but he's got a big nose, big mustache, and big eyes. Don't really see his mouth. But even the way he's designed to look, you can lose your hat in some stages, and then you can see Mario's perfectly combed hair. And this is the first Mario game that introduces a health bar. And you actually lose more health when you're hit. If you don't have your hat, it's effectively your armor, which I thought was very clever. Mario falls asleep if you're standing still too long. This is also one of the first games where Mario truly has a personality. Charles Martinet, I think, voiced Mario in one game before this, but this was the first mainstream game where now the retired Charles Martinet voiced Mario for the first time. And like from that start screen where you can manipulate his face and like get out your creative juices, like he said, you did an impression of it at the beginning of this episode, the "It's-a me, Mario," the impression that almost everyone can do because it's just so iconic and so very particular, and it just made these characters feel larger than life in a way that just hadn't existed before in the Mario canon either.
Yeah, and that voice, this is a good chance to pull over and talk about Charles Martinet's voice as Mario, because Mario had been portrayed in voice before this. We had Captain Lou Albano and live action Super Mario Brothers Super Show.
Plumber's log number 230. It wasn't the best way to start the day. Cooper had captured us and locked us in his dungeon.
We had, I forget who does the voice for the animated portions, but it's
It's still Captain Lou Albano.
Is it?
It's still
okay.
him.
It's still him.
Yes.
Slightly different sounding. And then you had Bob Hoskins in the live action Super Mario Brothers movie.
Mario Brothers plumbing, no leak too small. No, don't touch it. No, it's not a big problem. Just leave it to the professionals.
When I looked around, I was...
But all of them went for the same, like, hey, I'm walking here, gritty New York plumber sound. And I read that Martinet auditioned with something like that, and then like so many great voiceover like success stories, he says, well, let me just try one more thing. And we get the voice that we got because he wanted to do something that he felt was a little more kid friendly. He even said, I didn't know anything about video games or the character. You know, I just, the idea of making him more cute and cuddly. And he stumbled onto a voice which is now iconic to the point where it's locked in. Like, so they have a new voice actor for Super Mario Wonder, the most recent game, but that actor is just doing the same impression I did. It's his best mimic of Martinet's voice. And Mario doesn't talk a lot, but like even like Chris Pratt's voice for the Mario movie, like he doesn't change his voice a whole bunch, but he nudges it in Martinet's direction. Like that is so now like just tied up with the character's identity.
Yeah, I mean, and I would think it's funny because now all of the characters have a ton of personality. Martinet having also locked in a lot of that. The modern versions of Luigi, Wario, Waluigi, and a few others is all because of Martinet. He played all those characters. And now as those characters continue to grow and change with new voice actors for all of them, they are still building on that original style. And it definitely starts here. And you're right. Look, I actually quite enjoyed the Mario movie. It wasn't perfect. But I do love that both Charlie Day and Chris Pratt are playing on the existing tropes of those characters based on Martinet's performance. And I think it's a Mickey Mouse-ifying of it a little bit, right? Like making it a kid-friendly, higher-pitched, welcoming voice, this kind of bright spot. And a lot of very popular cartoon mascot characters are like that. It's one of the things that made Sonic pretty unique when he came out and started to talk as well. You know, Roger Craig Smith's version is much more attitude based and kind of snarky teenager, which is of course born out of the 90s cartoons as well. And I think it's funny that Mario has always kind of gone the other way. He's always kind of been the squeaky clean, kind of perfectly friendly, fun-loving character. And I'm curious to see how that changes as these new voice actors take on these characters. But just based on the short voice clips that we hear in Wonder, it does seem like they are doing some of a similar work. Not to say that they can't put their own spin on it, which they definitely do, but it is following in the footsteps of what came before. And it's all because of the groundwork that Martinet laid here.
Yeah, and I think Mickey Mouse is exactly the right analog. Like he's not only is he kind of the same proportions as Mickey, he occupies a similar space. He's very kid friendly. He's like Mario's for everybody. You know, like he's not going to be full of snark and attitude. He's just he is a cute and cuddly character by nature, and there is a certain codification that happens, right? No matter how many times Mickey Mouse is going to be voiced by somebody else this century, he's going to, once kind of Walt Disney, who originally voiced the character, they kind of locked into what Mickey Mouse would sound like by the time they did like Fantasia, and you can hear him in that. Like that's Mickey's voice, going forward since the 1940s. And like, I think Martinet's done that here. But to shift gears back to something else you had mentioned before, they really changed up the gameplay loop in terms of like how health and power-ups and stuff work in this game. They totally overhauled that. So like Mario 3, as we talked about, is kind of like the king of like, hey, you want a power up? Here's a different one. Here's a different one. Oh, you want to be a raccoon for a bit? Here you're a raccoon. Guess what? Now you're a frog. Oh, now you're a hammer brother. Now now you can fly forever. Here's the fire flower you love, right? Just now you're a shoe. Like here's all these different things you can be. Super Mario World does that slightly less. They kind of replace that with Yoshi a little bit, but here they really scale it back. Like you're not going through a level like looking for like, where's the mushroom that's going to make me big? Where's the thing that's going to let me shoot the fireballs or fly? Like it's mostly all about just giving Mario base Mario, more he can do by himself, just by running and jumping and bouncing around.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of the course for this and for Sunshine. We wouldn't get back to the specific power-ups that change Mario until Galaxy and Odyssey, all these different things that you can do. Whereas here, it's very much Mario is the powerhouse. He can do it himself, but you get a couple of power-ups that help you accomplish certain things. Now, I will say the only downside to this game, I think, in all these years, is that the flight and swim controls are still awful. The flight controls are very floaty, which is sad that they're not as good as, like, thinking about how solid the flight controls were in 3 and World. And then this one is fine for the things you have to accomplish. But the swimming controls, by God, worst control. Like, you have tank controls underwater while trying to swim. Now, again, they were still learning. They didn't really know how to. You want to be able to point Mario in a direction and then swim that direction. It ends up not working super well. They should have given us the frog suit in this game, is what they should have done, but that's neither here nor there. But I think besides those two sticking points for the controls, the power-up evolution is really great. And I do like that, for example, the metal Mario hat makes you jump a little lower and gives you weight in water, also makes you invulnerable. So does the translucent hat. Both of them, when you're wearing them, you can't be hurt by enemies, which I think is really a fun spin on giving Mario invulnerability without having the Starman theme. And also, I would say that the theme that Koji Kondo wrote for the Metal Mario power-up in this game rivals the original Superstar theme. Like, it's just probably one of my favorite compositions he's done for a power-up in any of the Mario games.
Yeah, we should mention that, the music here is all done by Koji Kondo, who did the original. He did 3 and World. Like, he is Mario's composer, for all intents and purposes. I mean, I think he eventually stepped back, but I mean, all of the theme work he did was pretty much set by this point. Also, he worked on Legend of Zelda, but like, his contributions here are great. The music, it really fits all the environments. Just sort of like, there was the story about in 3, he just sat down and played the music that felt like what would go with the levels. And I assume he did that here because everything really just fits together really well musically. So yeah, as you're moving around, you're going to spend a lot more time in these levels. I don't remember. Is there a timer that you have a time limit on what you're doing in there?
I don't think so. I think they dropped the timer for this one. Like, certain missions and stars will have timers, but not the stages themselves.
Right. So that's what my memory of it was. So you have a lot more free reign to explore and a lot more time. So they're giving you music that kind of is more, less urgent. It's more about like giving you a sense of place to explore the environments, because they figure you're going to spend a lot of time working your way through every nook and cranny of these levels. Yeah,
totally. And they're so finely tuned per stage. Like, I was bashing on the swimming a little bit, but like Jolly Roger Bay and the music for that is so serene. And like, we always talk about David Wise and his music for Donkey Kong Country, which also an all-timer underwater level track. But there's something about Jolly Roger Bay's music that always sticks with me as like, if I want to feel relaxed, if I need to calm down, if I need to take a breath, just throw that music on. It's super serene. It doesn't feel less stressful when you're swimming away from a giant eel under the water, but it is very nice, serene music. And like, all of the stages are unique. It's one of the few Mario games where I can hear in my head every stage's music because they are so unique to that stage. Something they had done in Mario 3 and previously is there would be a variety of different music, but themes would repeat depending on the stage, depending on the kind of stage. Think about the quick 2-time music that's in all of the like self-scrolling levels in Mario World or Mario 3, things like that. Whereas here, every world had to have its own theme. The Bowser fights had to have their own theme. The castle has to have its own music, all of that. Like, I think it's the most nuanced the music had been up until this point. Though Super Mario World still remains one of my favorite scores in a Mario game, I think this is the one that's like, okay, let's see what we can really do. How do we really grow this stuff and make it feel like you're in these worlds, these massive spaces?
Yeah, and part of it is just that, the hardware allowed for more different types of sounds, more sophisticated music, longer tracks. I like Super Mario World sound, but what's interesting about that is that it's basically one piece of music that is reinterpreted in a million different styles. So, but it's the same like melodic line, which is really interesting. And like sometimes you even forget of like all of a sudden you're like halfway through a level and you kind of hear do 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 do, and you're like, oh, it is the same song.
Yeah.
And here, like giving each of these individual painting worlds their own identity is really important. And the music is a big part of that. So like you said, you go into one of these and you're like, yes, this is the music that goes with this thing. It tonally fits. And it's a perfect accompaniment to you wandering around in these worlds, whether it's the haunted house level or, the desert area or wherever they give you. Yeah, just a really cool thing. The other thing you mentioned that we should talk about is that health bar. Like, that's really different. In previous Mario games, it was always like basically if you die in one hit, if you get a mushroom, you can shed the mushroom and take one hit. If you get a power up, you can shed the power up, then shed the mushroom, and so you get 2 hits. But that's it, right? And here they give you like an actual like meter with, it's like a pie chart with 8 slices. And you can keep losing those, and then you get coins to refill it, or you can cheat by going underwater and coming back out, which I think refills it. But it's a totally different approach to the Mario formula, and it actually it seems like not that big a deal, but it actually changes up the way you approach things because you can take more abuse from the enemies and you have more exploration to do to refill that meter. Functionally, what it means is you can do a lot more experimenting before you're dead.
Yeah. And like, if you fall in a pit, you're still dead immediately. Also, the game over-esque screen of like Bowser's like logo zooming in on you as you hear him laugh was just like, it just stays with me on the harder levels.
He's taunting you. Like, fuck you, Bowser. Yeah.
But I mean, the health bar is really great because it allows you to like take more risks. And you're right. Yes, when you swim underwater. So the good and bad of this health bar is also it's your air. When you're underwater, it slowly ticks down, but you can grab coins to refill it. I think you can also swim into large bubbles to refill it. But yeah, it was something that had not been done in a Mario game and then became kind of standard for the 3D Mario games, some kind of health bar or life system. Still lives in this. It's going to be a long time before we shed the lives system. But yeah, I think it kind of changes the dynamic of how you engage with the danger in this game. Also, you mentioned the abuse that Mario takes. I think giving Mario a voice made you feel for that abuse more than you ever did before. I can always hear Mario scream when he falls down a cliff in my head, the wail, the kind of Goofy-esque wail that Martinet lets out, and then the oof every time you get hit by anything or run into a wall or get hit by a bully or whatever. Like, there's just a sense of impact that I think also the health bar is a big part of, right? You lose health, but the screen also shakes for a second and you get knocked on your ass and Mario makes that noise. You're like, oh, okay, I shouldn't do that again. I just hurt Mario. I think one of my favorite mechanical things that serves no purpose other than comedy is if you fall from a high cliff on a sand or snow stage and you either dive head first or you just fall feet first, Mario will get stuck in the snow or sand. And it was my favorite thing to jump off like a tall house or high cliff in the snow or sand stages and get Mario stuck head first in the sand. And then he just kicks his little feet until you hit the jump button. It's just little flourishes that like that go along with the health bar and other things that make Mario feel like a real person in a way that he didn't before that. He felt like a video game character. There's more, it's all wrapped up in that personality. And I think these new mechanical flourishes add to that to make him feel like a genuine article video game character.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned a sense of impact. And I think that is a real thing that gets added here that is missing in the earlier games. And I think it just has to do with the fact that a 2D game is by its nature abstracted. And so when you say, like, you come up to a thwomp, right, which are these big spiky rectangles that just go up and down in 2D space, right? In your head, you can just be like, all right, this is a rectangle. I move left and right to get out of its way, and then I go past it. When you encounter one of these in Super Mario 64, it's a big, like, three-dimensional wall. Like, it's a big rectangle, but it's a huge thing. Instead of, like, going up and down in a linear plane, it will, like, track you and then fall towards you.
Yeah.
And so you have to, like, instead of, like, the way you have to evade these feels much more like I'm a real, like, three-dimensional person. I need to run out of the way of this thing, as opposed to, like, I just simply, float left and right, essentially, to time myself as I go under a garage door. This is much more like, oh, I'm in a space. I have to move my person around or he's going to get hurt. And then, adding in Martinet's, oof, little cries there really heightens that sense of impact.
100%. And what's funny is, like, there's quite a bit of voice acting throughout the game, like the womps that you mentioned that fall forward, but there are also, I think they're called thwomps in this game too, these big blue square blocks that have faces. When they go up and down, they go ooh when they hit the ground. It's just little things like that that flourish the world. And I think the sound design, which we've been talking about, and the music really do build out this world to make it feel like a realistic space that is just unlike anything that had come before. I think it's very easy to look at Mario 64 now and see how primitive it is, especially compared to the modern stuff, which also, and there have been 3D platformers out the wazoo since then, right? We've gotten so many since. Mario and Zelda walked, so Banjo-Kazooie, which came not long after, and the Pantheon Beyond could run. But I think it's really fascinating that here, the playfulness is at the forefront. Not that it's not for other 3D platformers as well, but it's very clear. It's never surprising to be reminded that Nintendo are toy makers at the forefront of everything they do, right? It's why they've taken the weird risks they've taken over the years. And this game was really that next level of, like, yes, we make games, but we make toys. We want people to play and have fun. And this game really gives you the ability to do that in a myriad of ways. It's also really simple it's one of those games that is simple to understand, but difficult to master. Whereas, like, you can do a lot with the jumps and wall jumps and dives and triple jumps. But if you can't master any of that stuff, you can do still a good 70% of this game and get through it, even if you're not as dexterous or haven't mastered those different kinds of wall jumps and different maneuvering. And I think the approachability of this game is also why it continues to be a beloved game all these years later.
Yeah, that goes into their, like, let's have fun philosophy and make this, as you said, a toy for everybody. Like, I think I could hand this off to my even my 5 and 8 year old, which is ostensibly it's designed for. They would have a lot of fun with this in a way that, say, I went and bought Celeste sight unseen because that just happens to be my daughter's name. I was like, ooh, a game called Celeste. I'm going to buy this. And I played it and I was like, she can't play this. This is, this is Massacre platforming, which for people who don't know, that's gamer for, like, no margin of error. Right. And so, like, Mario does not operate in this space. They'll put a handful of levels that require a greater degree of precision.
Right.
To give you a little challenge, but 80 to 90% of the game does not require quite that level of rigor. Like, they want you to have fun with it, when it's whether they're throwing lives or power-ups at you, or like here where they're kind of giving you lots of opportunities to get your health back up. And as you said, Mario can do in this game, like, he doesn't just jump. Like, if you jump once, you have your normal jump arc. If you hit jump again, he jumps a little higher than the jump before. And if you do it a third time, he goes, woohoo, and, like, flips over. You can run up walls and, like, jump back and forth off of walls. There's a lot of acrobatics he's capable of doing, all of which is fun, but not necessarily required to do most of the game. There's, like I said, a handful of times where that is required to get to something, but they're never going to, like, make it so you don't get to experience the bulk of the game because you haven't mastered this stuff.
Yeah, and I think this game and those jumps are the first time we really got a sense of Mario's agility. The game's was originally named Jumpman, although it's come out that that's not Mario. Jumpman is someone else.
There was also an Atari game called Jumpman, which has nothing to do with Nintendo, which is excellent, actually, for as goofy and weird as that is. I do recommend Jumpman, and I think Jumpman Jr. was the sequel to it. Like, kind of a really interesting looking and impressive for its day, like, primordial soup level platformer. But yeah, go on about Mario. I'm sorry for the tangent.
No, it's okay. I love a tangent. But yeah, like his agility really, like he could, all the mechanics, it was around jumping on enemies in the early games. But now between, he moved quickly with the raccoon tail and the cape and all of that. But like, this is the first game where Mario's agility was really on display as a character. He is very agile, and it only grows in the later 3D games that come after this. And the fact that you can kind of run around and dive and slide and all of that stuff just adds to the sandbox of it all and makes for a myriad of creative ways to fight a lot of the enemies too. It's not just jumping on enemies. You can dive at them. Mario has a punch and a kick that he can do. All these different things that allow you to engage in the limited combat that's in this game. You do fight and beat a lot of enemies, but like they just get clever. Like there's an enemy that you actually can't punch or kick that you have to run in circles around to kill. Like all of the movement options that Mario has given also gave them a ton of different options on how you interact with the enemies in this game. As instead of just being a straightforward jump or fireball, there are a myriad of other ways that you can beat enemies in the game too because of that mobility.
And it's really a miracle to me that all of this works so well, given that this really is, if not technically the first of its kind, I mean, really the big debut 3D platformer. Like you said, there have been a few other things poking at the edges of this, but for Nintendo to come out with this game and nail it so well, you would think, like, as you said, like, the swimming mechanics, the flying mechanics are a little bit rickety, right? And you can chalk that up to, well, this is their first time. They're inexperienced. But it's shocking how little of the game falls into that category. Most of it just feels like, oh yeah, once they kind of figured out how to make Mario move around in 3D space, they built a game around what they had designed for him that all like integrates perfectly into what this version of Mario can do. And so like all those encounters, all the things they ask you to engage with, like it feels fun. It feels polished, as if they had done this 100 times. And so much so that, as you said, like you started talking about like Banjo-Kazooie, like that's just the N64 generation of platformers. But you go all the way up through now and like, you play a modern Souls game or an Assassin's Creed game, like games in different genres, totally different genres and gameplay modes that still like there's stuff that they're doing that is like the fundamentals were laid down here that enable that stuff to work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that while not every modern 3D game has a direct line to this game, definitely aesthetically or environmentally or just kind of the framework, there's definitely correlation between a lot of them, right? And I think it's why when games come out that don't have good camera control or don't have, fun interactions or great controls or whatever else, it's easy to scoff at them because something like this that came out
28 years ago.
Yeah, I was gonna say almost 30 years ago, which hurts me to say out loud.
Yep.
It's doing it so long ago that like if you can't get it right now, like what are we even doing, right? Imagine if Mario Odyssey on the Switch had come out and like the controls were terrible. It would have been like, but you guys did this already. This should be simple. And of course, it's why Mario Odyssey remains as a masterpiece. And as far as I'm concerned, the modern Mario 64, because they just built on what they've done before. And that's something Nintendo's always done. I mean, in this generation, they didn't do it once, but they did it twice. They took two of their best 2D franchises, converted them to 3D, and made two of the defining games in those series with Mario 64 and Ocarina of Time. There are so many other studios and developers who don't have that track record. But the fact that they were able to do this and do it well right out of the gate and pioneer those areas to where now we have you want to drive a direct through line from Mario 64 to a modern game. Tears of the Kingdom is that game, right? Think about all the tools and toys they give us. The fact that you can pass through solid objects from beneath them because it was a dev tool that then they decided, oh, why don't we just give it to the player and see what they do with it? Like to this day, Nintendo is still putting fun first and putting like the toy maker side of it first. Now that doesn't mean that other games aren't fun and other people aren't making fun games. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the ethos of fun first, everything else second is absolutely still apparent in Nintendo's library, and this game is a big part of why that is, and a huge milestone along that path.
Yeah, it feels like they solved an equation, right? There was, this challenge was presented to them as to how do you make a game, the quintessential, like the flagship of any video game. It's going to be Mario every time, on top of like name a game that's popular, a game character people love. Like he is the mascot, not only for Nintendo, but I think for all video games. And so to have their flagship character go, make its debut in 3D and again, present them with the team with that challenge, make this beloved character do what he does and somehow reinterpret it to make sense in 3D. As you said, they met the challenge and they did it so well that, as you said, almost any game that like flunks this challenge afterwards, you have to kind of go like, dude, they figured this out almost 30 years ago. What are you doing? Like we already know how to do this and make this work. It's like, you don't reinvent the wheel. You don't reinvent this.
Yeah. And I mean, it's the best-selling N64 game for a reason, selling almost 12 million copies.
Which is crazy for any game, not just, this, but like those are rare numbers for any video game to do.
Right. It is one of the best-selling video games of all time. And it's because, and I'm sure there are Switch games that rival it now because the Switch is their best-selling console, I think, ever now. But, still, it is at the top of that list and a lot of lists for a lot of reasons. Now, are there better 3D games that you could play now? Probably, but I think it's still very important in the pantheon. And I think what's most important is that it has aged well. Has it aged perfectly? Of course not. The lack of a second analog stick, especially by modern game design, is a challenge. If we ever got a remaster or a port of this game that added second analog stick, but I think also the challenge of that game is in the design. He was designed to move with the one analog stick. If you add a second analog stick for camera control, it does kind of, I think, break the game, not in a way that I think really matters, right? Because at the end of the day, the game is about fun. But I think it was designed with the ethos of the one control stick, and I think it ultimately works really well. And you're right, they solved this equation so long ago, and it's why I think so many 3D platformers since have to innovate in different ways. I think of A Hat in Time, which is a wonderful indie 3D platformer, and one of my favorites in a long time is because they didn't try and redefine the wheel. You have some camera control. Besides that, you move in space similarly to Mario 64. What makes it unique is the different mechanics and puzzle solving and other things that they put in that game that make it unique for itself. You don't have to make your controls unique. You can use that base level and then just build on it and do something spectacular in other ways. And I think those are the most successful subsequent 3D platformers because they're not, like you said, trying to reinvent the wheel. They're just trying to build on it and add things to that wheel.
Yeah, and then the best proof of that are the 3D Mario games that have come since, right? We talked about Sunshine, Galaxy 1 and 2, and Odyssey, all of which, the basic movement of Mario is pretty much the same as it is here. They found other ways to iterate on the formula and do different things. So, Mario Galaxy takes place in space and you're moving around on all of these little planetoids and stuff. And it's, really kind of wild and fun. Odyssey has this possession mechanic where you can throw your hat on different beings and enemies and stuff, and you end up taking control. And it's like, oh, I get to be a bullet bill for a little while. I get to do these different things. And so I love that they were able to say, like, all right, we don't want to reinvent this wheel. We would just want to attach this wheel to a different machine and see what it does. And as you said, like Tears of the Kingdom takes their 3D Zelda formula, which still owes a debt to this, and finds different ways to iterate on that. By giving you a bigger playground and more things you can do to interact with it. But it's really interesting to see. Like, I'm curious to see like if there even can be further innovation on like the base thing, only because, like I said, it feels like you solved an equation. Like, you don't want to monkey with this. It's fundamental.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I think a big proof of that too is the examples you gave, and even Super Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury, which was the most recent true new 3D Mario game, that add-on Bowser's Fury, where again the controls stay basically the same, but instead there's an open world and like a kaiju style mechanic and some other things. But they're not changing Mario's control style. They're just changing the world around him. And I think that's why these games continue to be innovative. Look, you love or hate Sunshine, Flood, and the cleanup mechanic, which would then, I think, lead to Splatoon and all of that. All of that was innovative in a different way. It didn't jive with all players, but it was still, they wanted to do something different. They didn't want to just make another Mario 64, even though people would have absolutely bought Mario 64 2 or whatever that ended up becoming.
Yeah, I think there was actually something in development, and the title was Mario 128th, which is just not a good title.
No. But yeah, I mean, I just think that this still holds up as one of the most total packages. I think it's more fun to talk about the history of this game than the mechanical specificity of this game. We could have deep dived on each different painting and world, but I think, first of all, it's one of the more accessible Mario games from his past. You know, because of NSO, it's on that. It's also in the 3D All-Stars pack if you bought that when it was still available. I think the limited availability of that thing was dumb, but that's another conversation for another time. But like, it's also, you know, N64 emulators have N64 emulators have come a long way, and on PC especially, you can do a lot with that. They're even better than they used to be. Not that I, of course, condone emulations. All my emulators I delete after 24 hours. I would never do that. Anyway, but like, I think that this kind of conversation that we're having about why it's important to games is the kind of nostalgia I wanted to steep myself in, because you can only look back to get that, right? We had no idea. Like, I'm sure you and I, when we played it as kids, were like, this is incredible. This is so new and something different. But I don't think we ever would have wrapped our minds around how important it would have been to video games until we get to a place like now when we're quote unquote old and have that perspective on games as a whole, as well as this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a perfect way to encapsulate it, right? Like, you have to watch this thing evolve and unfold to find out. I mean, you knew it was a big deal, but you know, you wouldn't have known it was that big a deal. Because for a while it's like, oh, this is just really fun and neat and new, and it took a while to see like, oh no, like from a like basic, you know, design level standpoint, this is extremely important because of the effect it had on how everything in 3D would be approached going forward. We haven't done a whole lot of deep dives on the you know, the actual like bits of the game. Are there any, you know, specific parts of it that stand out you want to highlight before we conclude?
I mean, I think one of the big ones is the boss battle design. So there are several bosses in this game. There's the big Babam or King Babam in the first stage that you have to like pick up and throw to make him blow up. You have to get behind him, grab him, and then toss him. And they build on that for the Bowser fights later in the game, whereas you have to get behind Bowser, grab his tail, and toss him to hit a bomb off stage. I think that's really cool because it adds to the cartooniness, but also makes you engage in combat in a different way than you would like just jumping on enemies. There are some fun things that like play on what you know of Mario games. Like in this game, when you jump on a Koopa Troopa, he gets shot out of his shell, and then you can surf on his shell instead of just kicking it. You can ride on it, which I think is fun. I mean, there's just a laundry list of mechanics that go on and on. I really do love the boss battles. I like this version of Bowser. He feels more like a monster in this game. Something that I was like a character that's meant to kind of also freak you out a little bit as a kid. His evil laugh, his taunting of you, the way the camera kind of pans around him when you first encounter him. He's more of a kaiju creature than a playful character that he is in the later games. And both versions are valid, but I think it was really interesting that they went kind of more into the Godzilla style monster design for Bowser for this. And I think it's really unique. Although I do love Jack Black's interpretation of Bowser as well, also one for the ages. But like, I liked how different this was. He was pretty intimidating, I'd say, in 3 and World as well. But they just kind of built on that scariness of this larger than life villain.
Yeah. I remember just really loving the ghost house level in this.
Yeah.
Like, there's something really fun about, you find this like it's like a model of a ghost house out in the garden, right? It's not a painting quite like the others, but you end up going inside of it. You have to unlock, I forget how to like get inside. There's a secret to that. And then once you're like, oh, now I'm tiny and I'm inside, there's something kind of whimsical and imaginative about the idea of like, instead of just jumping through a painting, which is just a portal to this other world, it was like, oh, but also there's this, like there's other ways to go to, imaginative, surreal spaces. And once you're in there, like, I'm a sucker for Halloween stuff anyway, and like I love the boos from the earlier games. So to go inside this like 3-dimensional version of a haunted house was just, to me, I was like, this is my favorite space to just occupy. Even if it was a relatively difficult level to navigate and stuff, but something about the presentation of that always spoke to me.
Yeah, also has one of the worst jump scares in gaming history to this day. There's a piano that you walk by in a mostly empty room, and if you get too close to it, the top of the piano opens as a mouth, and it has teeth, and it chomps at you while making these discordant chords. To this day, traumatized me as a child. And yeah, you find that you go out into the courtyard, and there's a boo with something inside it. When you kill that boo, you can jump inside this little world. And like, I like this because you can fight the ghosts in this game. You couldn't fight the ghosts in other Mario games. In this, as long as you're not looking at them, so if you like backflip onto them or jump at them from the side, you can fight them and kill them, which is fun. And I think the origin of King Boo is here. I don't know if the final big boo that you fight there is called King Boo, but effectively this is the first boss boo that you fight. Besides the one boss boo in Super Mario World. And so like, I think the origins of King Boo definitely come from here. Yeah, I love that world. That's a great one. I think that's a good point, is like the worlds that are kind of, you get into them in a different way. There's one world to get to the desert world. It's not actually a painting. You jump through a wall in the basement and that takes you to the desert world. The Hazy Maze Cave, you jump into this like pool of what looks like liquid metal to get to instead of jumping in a painting. I like that it's a good point to bring up that once you're just starting to get the habit of and hang of, I just jump into a painting to go into a new world. They turn it on its head by going, well, now this world's stuck inside a boo, and that one's behind a wall that's nondescript unless you walk up to it. Things like that. Yeah.
Again, part of that philosophy of like, how can we surprise you? Right.
Yeah.
How can we, trick you just a little bit? And it just adds something. It would be so easy if they were all just paintings. You just go, okay, well, because it's fun. It's cool the first time, but after a while you're like, okay, well, on to the next one. And then just giving you these tantalizing things of like, I wonder what's behind that or down that hole. Like, it's like, there's going to be something and I bet it's going to be interesting. That is kind of the hook that they use to get you to keep exploring, to go like, there could be more that I'm not, seeing. There's something tantalizing here.
Yeah, I think my favorite of that is Tick-Tock Clock. So you encounter in one of the rooms this giant clock. And when you walk up to the clock face, you realize, I can jump into this. But the really brilliant thing is that depending on what time the clock is constantly spinning, what time you jump into the clock, either all the pieces inside are moving faster, slower, or are completely stopped. And you need one of those variants to get all of the stars within Tick-Tock Clock. And I love that too, right? Like, again, it goes back to the thing of like, not only are we asking you to interact with these objects, but then think about how you're interacting with these objects also to change the things that you are doing in those worlds.
Right. Like, what would be like 8 separate distinct hallways to go down in the previous 2D Marios? They're giving you the same 3D space, but they're recontextualizing it and saying, you're going to approach this from a different angle. We're going to ask you to do something different in here, or we're going to literally like change it ever so slightly where, like you said, part of it's moving or the water level is higher or something about it is slightly different to make you approach this same thing from a totally different angle.
Totally. And, it's funny because it's one of the few games that I think I have internalized from start to finish. Like, I was messing around with it on my Switch before we started recording. I wasn't going to rebeat it again, although I got back in the flow. And so I may end up doing a full playthrough at some point. But like, every stage I return to, I go, I remember how to do this. Oh, wait, is this the one where I do that? And like, it's just, then you just start thinking about all the different things you can do. I think something that, makes me miss playing video games as a kid versus now is the time we had. Like, I don't know that I'll ever internalize a modern game the same way I did Final Fantasy VII, this game, Chrono Trigger, because I played those games over and over and over again. Whereas now it's like, between being a video game podcaster and wanting to do that stuff, but all the games I play all year long, plus all the games that I love that I want to revisit, plus all the games that I've never played before, both new and old, there's not a lot of time to replay stuff. And if you do, you sacrifice playing new stuff that you haven't played or old stuff that you haven't played. And so this game also nostalgically reminds me of an era where I could spend 3 months just playing this game and nothing else, because I either didn't have the cash to get another new game or because I didn't want to, because I wanted to play this game. It's just, yes, it's effectively old person shakes fist at cloud at this point, but like it's a nostalgic time of my life that this game reminds me of, not just nostalgia for the game itself.
No, I agree. I definitely have to think about what, I don't have a ton of time to play games. And so there's definitely a scheduling that has to happen in my mind of like, okay, I really need to finish this or decide I'm not gonna, because, I can only do one of these at a time, and a replay is like absolutely not going to happen because there's just, it's a zero sum game, in terms of my time on planet Earth. So I got to go like, all right, I'm going to finish this thing or what, so you're right. Like, that's absolutely, like, there was so much time I had when I was younger to just go like, I don't know, I'm home from work or school or whatever, and I got hours to kill, and I can just, let myself get absorbed by one of these and explore a space till it is, I've completely absorbed it in my mind. And it's, not this particular game for me. Like I said, I didn't play this one as much, but there's plenty of games where like, yeah, this space, I know like the back of my hand. I know every facet of it because I spent that kind of time just internalizing it.
Yeah. And I think it's just when doing a podcast about nostalgia, the reason this game rang true to bring onto your show is because I'm nostalgic for this game, what it did for games, and what it meant to me as someone who played games and during that time when I played them.
Well, I think that's probably a great way to segue to the end here, which is, why do you think it is that, we talked a lot about the importance it had from a design standpoint and how much it sold and all of that. But I think at its core, what do you think it is that makes this game still, ring true almost 30 years later?
I think it's just what we said. It's the simplest thing from almost the beginning of this conversation. They figured out to make it fun to play. They made a version of Mario that was fun to control and then just put you in a sandbox to explore it. And I think that's one of the truer versions of game design. And some of my favorite games, I think why I enjoy them so much is because there's definitely a clear point of focus to, you're having fun playing this moment. Now you'll take that moment to other places. And this game is kind of the epitome, the ground zero for that, as far as how to have fun in a sandbox, and games even much later on, like Assassin's Creed, you mentioned earlier, and some other stuff will build on that idea, right? Is it fun to run around in the space? Great. Now let's give you stuff to do in that space. And I think this is kind of the epitome of this game. And again, all the reasons we cited of how it affected future game design. And it's not the only one that did, far from, but it's one of the major tentpole moments, I think, for modern gaming. There is a through line from this game to The Last of Us. It's probably not a very direct through line, but it's there for sure. Movement in space, how to tell a narrative through space, things like that. But like, I think that this game endures because, like we talked about, the fact that Mario Odyssey basically controls the same means they got it right on the first try. And not everybody can say that. And had this only been okay and then they iterated, it still probably would have had a similar impact. But because through luck or skill or both, or I'm sure some combination of both, they hit it in one, is why I think this game will endure forever.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and as I'm sitting here, I'm recording this downstairs, I can see into the next room where my kids had taken a whole bunch of couch cushions and made what they call houses out of them. They each have their own little area they've made, which they're going to be devastated when they have to take that down. But I watch my kids make forts out of couch cushions or have so much fun with something as simple as a cardboard box or a balloon. And the reason they're able to do that is because what they're thinking of is, how do I take this common object and recontextualize it to have fun with it? What can I do with this pillow other than sit on it, right? What can I make this box into? Well, if I'm Calvin and Hobbes, it's a transmogrifier or a time machine, right? And this is like the digital version of that. Like Mario, as you said, he's kind of a toy first, and giving you the like, okay, it's just as fun to make Mario jump and bounce around as it is to bat a balloon around the room and watch it kind of float. And there's something about the way that you get to move Mario through these worlds. Like, it's as if they said, like, how can we make the most fun? Here, kid, have the most fun cardboard box you could have to have fun with. And we're going to give you Cardboard Box World, where like everything is exactly tailored to have fun with this cardboard box we made. And to me, like, that's the magic of this, of like, not only is there the technical wizardry of like, we revolutionized video games with this thing, but also like setting, even if no other video games had ever been made after this, like, it's just innately fun. Like, it's just fun to be Mario in this world that they've built specifically to be the most fun Mario could have in it. Man, I think with that, we should probably bring this to a close. Matt, if people want to find your stuff, where do they find it?
I will keep this brief, as we've already gone over an hour, and no matter where this shakes out in the edit, I don't want to be here for another 30 minutes plugging my stuff. But you said it pretty succinctly at the beginning. You can find all my podcasts, which are Fun and Games, Screen Snark, which is currently on hiatus, and Reignite, over at djstormageddon.com. That's where also my merch store and the Patreon for Fun and Games is, if you want to support some indie podcasting. I'm really excited. Fun and Games I'm really excited because as of when we're recording, Reignite is jumping into Dragon Age 2, our 6th season, which is so weird to say out loud. On our adventure through BioWare, we're hoping that by the time we get to the end of Inquisition, there's either a new Mass Effect or a new Dragon Age, so we don't have to shift from BioWare, but who knows. But we're also going to be having guests on, so if you're listening to this podcast, you're like, I love Dragon Age 2. I'd love to be on a podcast about Dragon Age 2. Well, then at djstormageddon.com. I said that correctly. I had to think about it. You can find my email address and my social medias. You can reach out to me there. I'm DJ_Stormageddon in most places except BlueSky, because they don't like underscores for some reason. So I'm just DJ Stormageddon there. Would love to hear from you. But you can find all my podcasts again at my.com, and feel free to shoot me a message if you enjoyed this or other stuff that I've done. Doug, thank you for having me again. It's always a pleasure being on the show. I love that I can pretty much just message you out of the blue and go, hey, what about this thing? And you go, yeah, sure. Has yet to tell me no, and so I'm going to keep asking.
I'm glad you do, man. I love talking to you. It's one of the real pleasures of embarking onto this podcast project has been some of the really cool people I've gotten to meet along the way. So I'm glad you're here for this ride, and you're welcome anytime you want. If you want to find this show, of course, you've already found it, but if you want to find us on the social media places, we're on all of the major social media networks, including Facebook, Twitter, BlueSky, Threads, Instagram, and even a little bit on TikTok. So just look for Nostalgia Arcanum in any of those places. You'll find what you need to find, and I'm putting links, as always, to those portals into the show notes, so you can find them there easily. So if you have feedback on our recent episodes, which I'll admit I'm recording this pretty far in advance, so I'm not sure exactly where this is in the pipeline, but recent episodes would probably include UHF, which we're recording this week. We've got one in there. Let's see. We did the Thomas Crown Affair recently, Three Ninjas. If you liked the 90s movies 2-part retrospective, we decided to do one for the aughts. So that's coming up somewhere in the pipeline as well. So keep an eye out for that. So that's kind of what's going on. And of course, if you have the time and are so inclined, please do drop us a review wherever you found this, and Matt's stuff as well. It's the best way to help podcasts grow and reach new audience members. And aside from that, of course, is word of mouth. So tell people you liked it, both online and off. So with that, man, Matt, thanks again for doing this. This was a real pleasure to revisit.
Thank you for having me. I was happy to be here. Let's go.
So until next time, that is one more entry in the Nostalgia Arcanum.
It's me, Mario! It's a me, Mario! Woohoo! Let's go! Okie dokie! I've been the voice of Mario for 26 years.
Now moving on to Luigi.
Oh. Hi, I'm Charles Martinet. I do the voice of Super Mario. Here we go! Woohoo! And Luigi too. Luigi number 1. Ha ha! And Wario, have a rotten day. Yahoo! You gonna eat that garlic? And I was even Donkey Kong at one point. I am an actor and voice actor. I did, 25 years of theater.
Run along to your party!
Corporate videos. Circuitry and semiconductor processes. A few film and television products.
Now beat it, all of you. Now!
And then I had the marvelous beginning of becoming a voice actor, and that's how I started with It's a me, Mario. Mario was first created in 1981 in a game called Donkey Kong. As it got refined through the years, it became Mario and Princess Peach. The princess. And I came along in 1990. I actually crashed an audition because I was catching them as I walked in, they were walking out, finished for the day. I said, can I read for this? And the guy looked at his watch and he goes, all right, come on in. You're an Italian plumber from Brooklyn, a character in a video game for Nintendo called Mario. So make up a voice, make up a video game, start talking. And I thought to myself, video game? I don't know anything about video games. And all of a sudden I hear action. I go, hello, I'm a Mario. Let's make a pizza pie together. You go get some sausage. I'm going to get some spaghetti. We put spaghetti in the sausage and the pizza. And he said, cut, stop talking. There's no more tape. All right, thanks. We'll be in touch. And I thought that was, okay, there's the door. We'll see you later. And he calls Nintendo. I found a Mario. I got him. And that was 26 amazing, fantastic years ago. Hello. Whoopee! Oh, look at this world. The character, for me, brings out the best in me, and so I love that. I love sharing things, too. I go to meet Mario fans, and I hear the most wonderful thing. You're the voice of my childhood. Or I used to play with my dad. Now I'm playing with my kids, and it's a way our family comes together. Yeah. Pretty good. This brings back the memories. Mamma mia. You just have fun, That's my mantra for life. Come on, let's go. Let's have more fun. Bye-bye. See you in my games. Woohoo!